Welcome to a special edition of Reporting Scotland from Turnberry, where we await the arrival of Donald Trump. A major security operations in place around his golf resort, with protesters being kept well away. We'll be live at Prestwick Airport, where Air Force One is due to arrive in just over an hour. We'll be analysing the political fallout from the President's criticism of Theresa May's latest plans for Brexit. And we're at the first big anti-Trump demonstration in Scotland as protesters gather in the centre of Glasgow. Good evening from Turnberry in Ayrshire, where we're waiting for the arrival of President Trump after a day which saw him meet the Prime Minister at Chequers before having tea with the Queen at Windsor Castle. The President will spend the next 2 days here at his Turnberry golf resort. We're told he'll spend his time preparing for his meeting with Vladimir Putin and perhaps playing some golf. But his visit to the UK has been controversial. He's already faced large demonstrations in London, and there'll be further protests here in Scotland over the next 2 days. Aileen Clark has been looking at the security operation in place here in Ayrshire.
Before leaving for Scotland, President Trump's last engagement was to meet the Queen at Windsor and inspect the well-drilled lines of the Coldstream Guards. Meanwhile, more than 400 miles north, the police operation on the Ayrshire coast very much taking shape at Turnberry. Thousands of police will be involved over the weekend. The platform for this armed team of officers, giving them a breathtaking view of Ailsa Craig. But it's not the scenery they're here for, it's the security of the President that's at the core of this massive policing plan.
Visits of President Trump, of course, are extremely rare, but equally really challenging and demanding for the security services. So this is up there with G8, with the Commonwealth Games and with events of that size. And for the weekend ahead, many hundreds, thousands of officers over the 4-day period will be deployed to keep him safe, to keep the public safe, and to facilitate that legitimate protest.
On the approach to Turnberry, Nitro, the sniffer dog, has had a very busy day, an integral part of the search team, as cars were checked by hound, then by hand, before making it through the roadblocks. A number of roads have been closed around the area, but in nearby Girvan, locals seem to be taking all this heightened security in their stride.
And my son works out at Turnberry, so he had to go through, I think it was a checkpoint, and my father-in-law was taking him out. If he wanted to go through with the car, he had to get the car searched and whatnot, so he decided against it, just dropped him off, but I think it is necessary.
Will you be trying to get a glimpse of him anywhere?
I've spoken to him twice. I don't need to get a glimpse of him. And my son's making his breakfast in the morning, so you can't get any better than that, can you?
Shona Quick was born in Ayr but brought up in America. She's moved back to her roots now and says the security operation here is appropriate for a president.
I think it's absolutely essential. The security, I think, comes with the office. It doesn't come with the person. A lot of people think, oh, they're down on Trump because we're spending our taxpayers' money on his protection, but it wouldn't matter who the guy was. It could be JFK, it could be Clinton, it could be anybody.
Wherever you look around Turnberry, you'll see police on the golf course, on bikes, on boats. Police Scotland say it has been a challenge to work out just how to secure this area. After all, it's a golf course and a hotel complex. But that's why, as well as all the police on the roads round about here, you'll also see plenty of them lined up on the beach. The President is expected to spend the weekend at his hotel. Today the Trump helicopter was parked up and waiting, and it's likely he'll head down for a round of golf on the famous course he's spent millions redesigning. Aileen Clark, Reporting Scotland, Turnberry.
The President's due to arrive at Prestwick Airport in the next hour. Our correspondent David Henderson's there for us tonight. What more do we know, David?
Well, Sally, we know that Donald Trump likes to play it big, and he's doing exactly that, arriving in Scotland in the grandest possible style on board Air Force One, the presidential plane due to touch down here in just over an hour's time. As a result, tremendous security here at Prestwick Airport, hundreds and hundreds of police officers all around the airport. No signs, no obvious signs of protest yet, but lots of people are here to watch Air Force One arrive.
Well, first of all, my husband was coming back from getting the morning paper and noticed that there were quite a lot of police presence at just about 20 yards from where we live. And we decided we would come for a walk and been quite amazed at what we've seen.
It's just something a bit different today, really, to see Air Force One and all the carry-ons, you know.
I know who's on the plane, obviously, but I'm neither up nor down about them, to be fair. We'll just get to see the plane.
Now, when Donald Trump arrives here this evening, he still has to travel down the coast to Turnberry, to his golf resort. There's a couple of options available to him. He could climb on board Marine One, that's the presidential helicopter, for that 20-mile flight, or he may choose to get into the presidential motorcade and travel by road. We don't know which option he prefers. But one thing is clear, Donald Trump has said many, many times that he loves Scotland. We're about to find out if Scotland loves him back.
Indeed. Thank you very much, David Henderson. Well, the President's visit to Scotland comes after an extraordinary day in which he told a newspaper that Theresa May's Brexit plans would kill off any trade deal with the US. He backtracked on that later. Meanwhile, thousands of people have been marching through central London to protest at the President's visit. Here's our political correspondent, Nick Eardley.
A handshake and a smile, but there's no disguising the awkwardness after President Trump said the Prime Minister's Brexit plan made a trade deal with the United States less likely. Controversy follows this president wherever he goes, and so does protest. Today it's London, tomorrow it'll be Scotland. And here's some of what you can expect over the weekend. A giant balloon depicting the President as a baby. It'll be flying over the skies of Scotland tomorrow.
Trump baby will fly over Scotland this weekend. I absolutely guarantee it. You know, now that we've run him out of town in London, we've got to run him out of Scotland.
But first, a political row to diffuse.
So I would say I give our relationship, in terms of grade, the highest level of special.
So what about that trade deal the President had rubbished less than 24 hours earlier?
I read reports where that won't be possible, but I believe after speaking with the Prime Minister's people and representatives and trade experts, it will absolutely be possible. But the trade is a little bit tricky. We want to be able to trade and they want to be able to trade, and I think we'll be able to do that.
The United States is keen for us, we're keen to work with them, and we will do a trade deal with them and with others around the rest of the world.
It wasn't all helpfully diplomatic.
Boris Johnson, I think, would be a great Prime Minister.
And then there was this claim.
Well, if you remember, I was opening Turnberry the day before Brexit, and I think you will agree that I said I think Brexit will happen.
It's a great thing. Not quite. That visit was the day after the referendum, though the President had previously predicted the result. And just as President Trump was making those comments, the second of the big protest marches in central London was beginning. Some argue that it's the right thing to welcome the leader of one of our oldest allies, but others, including the tens of thousands expected here, disagree.
There's no way we should be welcoming here. It should be meeting the Queen and having that honour.
This president, to me, is not only the worst example of our species, I just think he's a highly destructive person.
His views are awful. We need to stand against and help America to get rid of him because everything he does is just wrong.
At a time of political division, the most divisive president of all is tonight on his way to Scotland. Nick Eardley reporting Scotland, London.
Our political correspondent David Porter is at Westminster for us. David, a fraught day for the Prime Minister.
Fraught indeed, and that is probably putting it rather mildly, Sally. Today is, of course, Friday the 13th, and after the past 24 hours and Donald Trump's comments about Theresa May and Brexit, she probably will not need reminding of that. This was always going to be a controversial visit. As you can see, there are still protesters in Parliament Square behind me, but generally the demonstrations here have been pretty good-natured today. This morning, Donald Trump and Theresa May met at her weekend retreat at Chequers in Buckinghamshire. There was an immense amount of interest in light of that Sun newspaper interview that he had given as to what the news conference would be. As it turned out, he lavished praise on the Prime Minister, calling her an incredible and terrific woman, saying that he was sure that she would get a deal on Brexit, and he hoped that they would get a deal on a trade agreement between the UK and America. Of course, that is all in contrast to the comments he made to the Sun newspaper when he questioned her Brexit strategy, her negotiation strategy, and lots of other things as well. The overwhelming feeling in Downing Street is one of relief tonight. Relief, I think, that things could have gone a lot worse today, but also as well privately that Donald Trump is now in the air en route to Scotland and will be taking part in what is regarded as the private part of his visit.
David Porter in Westminster, thank you very much indeed. A demonstration against the President's visit is being held in the centre of Glasgow tonight. Our reporter Katie Hunter is there. Katie.
Sally, crowds have been gathering here since about 4:30 this afternoon, and you can see it's pretty packed now. Hundreds of people with banners, none of them particularly complimentary about President Trump. And speaker after speaker has been on the stage behind me criticising the President's policies on women's rights, on immigration, to name a few. Now, there are no plans for President Trump to meet anyone from the Scottish Government during his visit here. But earlier, I spoke to the SNP's Keith Brown, who's one of many politicians here tonight.
I think it's very important to express our opposition to the policies of Donald Trump, whether that's the way he treats immigrants, the way he treats women, the way he's mocked people with disabilities, and to express Scotland's opposition. He said yesterday in Brussels that Scotland loves Donald Trump and supports his immigration policies. Well, this is a proof that's exactly wrong. Scotland opposes what Donald Trump stands for.
Well, this is one of several rallies taking place across the UK today. Organisers want this to be a peaceful protest, but they want it to send a powerful message. And people here haven't been holding back on their feelings towards President Trump.
He's the President of America, so I think he should come, but I think that we then have the right to say that we disagree with him.
We've come here today to join with thousands of others to send a clear message that Trump's not welcome.
You feel you've got to stand up against, it's Donald Trump, it's not the President of the United States, it's Donald Trump the person, and his views are just disgusting.
Well, there was a very small pro-Trump protest earlier on. Those protesters were surrounded by police to keep them separate from the main protest here, and they were eventually led away by officers. But on the whole, this has been a very friendly, very good-natured event, and it's expected to continue until 9 o'clock this evening.
Katie, thank you very much for that. I'm joined here in Turnberry now by our political editor, Brian Taylor. Brian, it's David Mundell, the Scottish Secretary of State, who's going to be meeting President Trump when he lands at Prestwick Airport, not Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister. How much of a dilemma has this been for the Scottish Government?
It's something of a quandary. I mean, Nicola Sturgeon, all politicians have, to varying degrees, been sharply critical of Mr. Trump. Nicola Sturgeon has been among those who's been very critical. Indeed, there's one report today suggesting that Donald Trump hates her. Personally, I imagine she could endure that with equanimity, but when tomorrow, for example, there's a substantial march and demonstration in Edinburgh, rather than attending that, she's leading the Pride March in Glasgow, in its way perhaps sending a signal to Mr. Trump. But, you know, there is a problem for those politicians who are in government, like Nicola Sturgeon, because too easily for Americans it can seem that the protesters insist that they are protesting against one American, not America, but too easily it can seem that tips over into criticising the office and even criticising America. And so I think it was no accident that it's Keith Brown who's being sent from the SNP to speak at the rally in Glasgow tonight. He is the deputy leader of the party, so therefore he represents a political standpoint, but to his own intense chagrin, he's no longer in government, so therefore he's not representing the Scottish cabinet. So I think that is quite a diplomatic move by Nicola Sturgeon. As to David Mundell, he will welcome the President at Prestwick Airport. He says that he has been critical of various Trump policies in the past, but he argues that it is right to welcome a man who comes from a nation which is Scotland's largest single export market, £4.8 billion worth of goods.
Brian Taylor, thank you very much. We'll come back to you a bit later on. But in the meantime, we go back to Sally McNair in the studio in Glasgow for the rest of tonight's news.